Hello and welcome to a new colouring video. Today I'm going to be doing another picture in the Magical Worlds by Johanna Basford, and I'm going to use the Derwent Artist Pencils. I haven't really used them very much at all. I got them a few years back and I'm trying to use all my art supplies that I don't ever get around to using. So I'm going to do this lovely underwater scene. Quite detailed, but I want a paler kind of style. I feel like I really colour too dark. My colourings always end up really dark, and I overshade, like I add too much shading. So I'm going to try and cut back on the shading, and I want to use muted colours, and I'm going to colour it in more of a paler style. So the colours that I've picked are some kind of muted blues and some corally pinky oranges and some light warm colours like a light salmon. I'll list all the colours underneath if you have these pencils and you want to follow along, but if not, you know, you can just pick similar colours out of your own pencils, whatever it is that you use. So the first colour that I'm using for the background is blue grey. Now this is a lovely pencil. It's actually quite soft for a Derwent Artist pencil because they are very hard pencils, but this one's a little bit softer. It's like a slate grey and it's really lovely. So I'm just making it a little bit darker towards the bottom and then just getting lighter towards the top, like really super light at the top. And then I'm doing exactly the same on the seabed. There's two parts to that, so dark at the bottom, lighter at the top. And then with burnt umber, which is just a dark brown, I'm layering over the top of that. So the blue was just kind of an undercoat just to darken it up a little bit. And then I'm using French grey just for the top parts there, which would be lighter. So for these shells in the foreground, I've got a group of colours and I'm just going to alternate with these different colours. So they're all kind of pinky corals. There's pale vermilion, pink madder lake, rust and Mars violet. So that's what I'm using for all the shadow areas. And then I've got a pencil called Salmon, which is a really pale pinky salmon colour. And I'm using that for all the highlighted areas, and then I'm just mixing the colours up. Now I'm onto these stepping stones. I'm using the burnt umber and I'm adding some shading to the side and the back area And then with the French grey, I think it's either the French grey or felt mist, but it's just a really light grey. I'm just colouring the tops of those steps. And then I'll go back in with the burnt umber and add a little bit of shadowing. Again, so this is like a cast shadow that the stone is casting onto the seabed. So it's kind of to the bottom and the back area of the stone. And then all the other elements in the background of this centre part of the picture, I'm just using the same colours that I used for the shells and just varying the colours for all the different elements. This particular coral that I'm colouring now, I've used the Mars Violet and the pink Madder Lake for that one. And for these strands of seaweed, I think they are, I'm just using the burnt umber and the Mars Violet. So I just want them to be really muted and kind of fade into the background. And then I do add some darkness to the bottom with, I think, an Indigo pencil. Yeah, so all these elements are just the colours that I've already used, and I'm just mixing them up. And now I'm onto the castle. I'm just using two colours. I'm using Indigo just to go around the edges of all the little sections, and then I'm using pale Ultramarine in the centre, and some parts like the underside of the roofs I'm colouring with the Indigo, making that quite dark. Yeah, so just two colours for the castle. And I'm doing some of the foliage with blue as well. So I think this is it's either the Indigo or the blue-grey, but there's not much difference in colour, and the blue-grey is much softer, so it's easier to use actually. Yeah, I'm just kind of mixing it up. I don't want all of the foliage to be the pinky coral colours, so I'm throwing a few in that are dark brown and dark blue. And then now onto these little lanterns. I'm using the pink Madder Lake to make a glow around the outside, the burnt umber just for the little candle, and the pale Vermilion just for a little bit of glow around the candle. And then I'm using the burnt umber to add some shading to the metal parts of the lamps. And now I'm going to add some metallic colour. I'm just going to use one colour that's going to go nice with the colour scheme. So this is Shiny Shell Pink and it's absolutely gorgeous. And I'm just going to pick out some parts to just add some subtle metal bits. So I'm making the paint up and putting it in a little separate palette. This is better than actually using it from the little pan itself, because the water just keeps on continuing to sink through the paint, and then the next time you go to get some on your paintbrush, it's gone really thick. So it's better to do it this way, and it stays kind of watery for much longer. You do eventually have to add a little bit of water because it does dry up after a while, but it's just so much easier to put the paint onto a palette and then use it off the palette. So I'm starting with this tiny little brush, and yeah, it's okay for this little shell. I mean, it's got a tiny little point on it. I do move on to a different brush though that's easier to use, which I'll show you in a minute. Yeah, so the more you do this, the better your hand gets at painting tiny areas. And this is the other brush. So this is a 10/0 liner brush, and it's Princeton Velvetouch, and it's a synthetic brush. And this is the best one I've found for getting into small areas. Now, if you can see here as I'm starting off, you can see the brush like really wobbling. I'm trying to drag it along, and you can see my hands like shaking. It's proper wobbling from side to side, the brush. It's like I've got a bit of a tremor in my hand. But then if you notice a bit later on, after just doing this for what, 10-20 minutes practice, my hand got a lot steadier and I was able to paint much more accurately. And here I'm going in again on top of that once it's dry, because you can see if you've missed any bits or if it's a bit patchy, you can just put a second layer on there. And it's important to get the right consistency of paint. You don't want it too watery, but you don't want it too thick either. You want it to be able to flow. So just a little tip, if you can see here, I got like a bead on the brush. You can see the little bead there, and then if you drop the bead onto the page and then just use the brush to drag and manipulate that bead of paint where you want it in like long strokes, that's an easier way to control the paint. And if your eyes aren't good, get a magnifying glass, because for this I had my face like about 5 inches from the page, and I also had reading glasses on, just so that I could get a real good close-up. And the more I did it, the less and less I was kind of going over the lines. So here I'm doing the bead thing again, so that's kind of the consistency that you want the paint to be. Drop the bead on and then just drag it in all directions. But if it's too watery, it might seep through, and this particular paint has got like pink dye in it, and if it's too watery to the point where the water seeps through the page, it'll pull that pink dye onto the other side of the page, so you must be careful. I checked the other side of the page and I did get 2 little dots that were just 2 slightly little pink dots, but I knew in some parts it had been really watery, that paint. And also if it's too watery, you definitely will need a second layer over it. So if you can just get that perfect consistency, that's always the best. Okay, so I picked out some other parts to paint with the pink metallic. I did the windows, part of the door, the little fish, but not all of them, just some parts of the fish, the little starfish, and some little elements on the outside. If you can see some little metallic elements on some parts as well. And I'm also taking the blue colour to some of the shells on the outside, just to bring that blue outside the frame as well. And yeah, I'm just doing the darker parts with the blue slate and the lighter parts with the pale ultramarine, and then just add a little bit of shade into the middle parts. Now I'm just gonna, using the same colours, just colour all the rest of the elements on the outside that I did on these shells here. Okay, so there was just a few more little elements to finish off there in the middle that I didn't do earlier, and now I want to add some more shading to the seabed. So I'm going to get some of the Chromaflow pencils because they're much softer, and I should be able to go over that hard artist pencil, and I'm going to darken the floor of the seabed and add some more shading like underneath the crab and some of the other elements. So I'm using a dark brown colour from the Chromaflow and a black, and then I'm also using a sandy colour, just like a light sandy colour to the top area of this the seabed where it would be lighter. Okay, so that's the finished picture. I did have the urge to get a white Posca pen and add some little white bits, but I wanted the metallic to stand out, so I didn't want to make it too detailed. Yeah, so I hope you've enjoyed the video. Everything's listed below in the description, all the colours that I've used, and thank you very much for watching.